Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco, sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
I'm left with no doubt now that, you know, there is something out there and that we are being visited.
The bells were ringing. There were things happening from the moment you sat down. There was something going on all the time.
These stories are some of the strangest experiences ever described in the UK. We can't tell if they're true, but they are all recounted by ordinary people. Now they are your witnesses. Many people embrace a deep desire to prove their belief that we are not alone in the universe. Chris Martin has spent many hours gathering remarkable video footage of what he believes is undeniable evidence of an alien presence in our skies. His footage is a source of great debate, and there are many skeptics, but Chris himself has not always been a believer.
I was a professional musician, session guitar player, and I was doing that pretty much from when I left school. And I used to do sessions for various bands in the kind of rock genre. I did that up until probably about 97. Yeah, about 1997. That's when I got more involved in the researching the UFO phenomena.
In 1996, Chris was introduced to the concept of alien phenomena by his girlfriend at the time, Vicky.
It was probably 2 or 3 months into the relationship that she confided in me that she'd had this kind of paranormal side to her existence, that she'd met these entities in kind of dream states at night, and actually physically she'd seen these small figures in her room when she was very young. And I remember being absolutely fascinated, and I wanted to actually try and get to the bottom of that and find out whether this was a reality or some kind of fantasy in her mind.
At first, Chris was not convinced of Vicky's claims, but he started to take the subject seriously when he too began to witness strange objects in the sky.
Well, the very first time we saw a UFO, we weren't actually looking. We were going to the shops, and Vicky saw this white sphere on the side of a cloud. It was a sunny afternoon, and this thing was just hovering on the edge of the cloud. And what was really odd is that it went into the cloud and reversed out. It did this a couple of times. We both stood there trying to work out what kind of vehicle or aircraft could do that. And we suddenly realised that, you know, there wasn't anything that we knew of that could perform those kind of manoeuvres, you know, reversing mid-air. You know, and this thing didn't look like a helicopter. It was round and metallic, and that's when it hit us that we were actually looking at an actual UFO. And that was the first time, but it was I'll never forget it. It was amazing.
After that first sighting, Chris began to capture many strange images on video of objects in the sky that he believes are alien craft.
I popped out into the garden on the off chance to see if there was anything there, and I saw this thing just above the roof, just tumbling. It seemed very reflective. It was catching the light, and I managed to get the camera set up and film the thing. It was probably only visible for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, but it was significant that it looked very unlike a balloon or a bird.
Some believe Chris's footage plays an important role in backing up claims of an alien presence in our skies. But for many others, the evidence remains far from conclusive.
What's the law of averages here? If you go out and purposely look for something, I'm pretty sure you'll find something, certainly in areas where there's a lot of aerial activity, i.e. London. You know, the busiest airports in the world live just outside London. So it's no great surprise that you can see something and film it in the night sky.
But Chris is not alone in his beliefs. Many people who have viewed his footage believe it to be true evidence of alien visitations. Stuart Wisdom has actually been along on several of Chris's skywatches and has even begun to film his own sightings.
You have to see these things for yourself. I mean, you can show footage, but it doesn't, once you see one of these spheres for yourself firsthand, it's a whole new ball game. It really brings it home.
This is some of Chris's most intriguing footage to date. As yet, no one has been able to prove whether this is, as Chris claims, an alien craft, or whether there is a more conventional explanation.
As soon as I looked at it, I thought this was something very strange. So again, you know, set up the camera, zoomed right in onto full zoom, and I really can't describe what it was. It was just very, very unusual orange, horseshoe-shaped kind of object. Had kind of ribs around it. It seems solid. It's not hollow. It's not a kite of any kind. And we've estimated that it's at least 100 feet wide, and that negates any kites or fairground balloons, because there is nothing available in this country that is that size. Some skeptics have said it's a kite that was broken loose from a march that was on that day in London. But again, I've had a look on the internet, and some of the kites that I've seen displayed are very, very small. They certainly don't look anything like this orange object. So again, it's another classic UFO. It's not identifiable.
Over the years, Chris has videoed so many unusual objects that it appears he has developed an instinct for when and where they might appear.
People say to me, well, how do you know when there's going to be a sighting? And there aren't really the words to describe how it is, but it's more a sense of knowing. It's like kind of knowing someone's going to visit you. I wouldn't say something that's special, or, you know, I think anyone could do it. Anyone who's watching this, you know, could actually go out and try and initiate contact, you know.
Chris's catalogue of footage is undoubtedly intriguing, but with numerous theories that offer more conventional explanations, ufologists like Chris know they must attempt to approach the evidence with an objective and rational mind.
There's a great will to believe in a lot of people, and it's a common factor that if someone does have an experience or a sighting, then they're looking for further confirmation, if you like. They'll look skywards. Some people just are content to look, while others, in certainly modern times, use technology. They use their video camera or still camera to try and confirm what they already believe or they've already seen or experienced. And Chris may fall into that category. I'm not saying he does, but he may do. And he's certainly got a sharp eye for this type of thing. So points his camera skywards when he thinks he sees something unconventional and films it.
What I tend to do is film whatever I see and then look at it later and then decide if it's something anomalous or not. Most people are not very good at judging distances or size, because if you're dealing with something that's very high up or looks high up, it could actually be something that's very small but very low. But I'd like to think now, you know, I'm a fairly good judge of what I see.
In the past, myself and others would take those less experienced out into the moors to look at the night sky, to show them how to identify conventional objects like the stars and the planets, an aircraft, and even hot air balloons at night, and which are rare, but we didn't know where there would be some. So that if they get a report of this nature, they know how to cross it off the list, so to speak.
When you film a balloon, especially what I've got, where a helium balloon is highly reflective when it's high up in the sky, but with a helium balloon, it's going to be wobbling around, and it's going to be doing sort of erratic movements. A lot of what I've got, it does seem to be, they're either stationary or they do move in a very, very controlled manner.
He seems a very genuine young man, very sincere in his beliefs, and he obviously believes himself that what he's filming is something anomalous, and that's fine if that suits Chris. but I'm afraid I don't share his opinions. I've watched Chris Martin's videos, and with the greatest will in the world, I can't see anything on there that can't be explained in conventional terms. You know, most of them look like balloons of one sort or another with a few mixtures of aircraft thrown in for good measure. And they don't display any non-ballistic motions. They behave just like conventional objects do, and they even look like them. I mean, that's no disrespect to the gentleman in question, but to me, they've all got a conventional explanation. I wish they didn't have. I'd like to say that they don't, but they do.
Well, I was someone that used to be interested, but now it's something that I feel passionately about. I feel it's something that needs much wider public recognition. I think it's something that the media should really investigate and in an unbiased way. I think it should be much higher on the political agenda. At the moment, it's still regarded as a joke and a kind of a cranks topic. I'm left with no doubt now that there is something out there, and it's an old cliche, but I believe that we are being visited, and I have no doubts anymore.
The bells were ringing. There were things happening from the moment you sat down. There was something going on all the time.
In spring 2001, paranormal investigator Montague Keen came across a case that would turn into one of the most intriguing paranormal investigations of its kind.
We came across a lady who had some experience trying for physical phenomena, and she was interested in getting investigated by the Society for Psychical Research, which is a scientific body concerned with objective investigation.
The group claimed that they had witnessed a series of paranormal activities in a house in Ealing, West London. They wanted to prove their claims to a group of independent paranormal investigators. They performed a series of experiments within a controlled environment.
They wanted to see whether they could produce physical phenomena similar to that which they had experienced in another group that I had also investigated, but to do so in conditions which enabled objective and critical scientific observers to be satisfied that there was no possibility of fraud. And she was genuinely enthusiastic about a scientific approach to these phenomena. So they volunteered, this is very unusual, they volunteered to be investigated, and I was doing the preliminary work with my colleagues to see whether the conditions were right.
The experiments were arranged to enable the investigators to discover whether any strange activity was the result of human intervention, or indeed, something truly unexplainable.
Clearly, we couldn't lay down conditions that they couldn't comply with, and vice versa. We wanted to have conditions which would be acceptable to us from the point of view of controls against fraud or deception of any sort, so they had to be pretty rigorous. On the other hand, they had to agree what they could do.
The investigators insisted that everyone in the sealed-off room was secured behind a large net curtain to prevent any tampering. However, the previous strange activity in the house had occurred in virtual darkness, and this would have to be replicated if the experiments were to reveal anything. With all conditions in place, Montague Keen didn't have to wait long for the strange activity to begin.
One of the most interesting and exciting things that happened almost at the beginning was that in front of the curtain there was a small table. It's a little pedestal table, only about 2 feet wide, and the table would rise in the air, turn over so that it was the top was facing us, and would greet us by just bending down in front of us, one after the other, moving along the row. It was clearly intelligently motivated.
This bizarre event was also witnessed by Veronica Ford, one of several observers present at the experiments.
Well, as soon as the table started responding to me, I thought, my God, this is real. This is not this is not anyone's imagination. This is for real.
After the table had, as it were, greeted us by moving across the row, the table then having been upended in some way, bending itself towards us, it did this gentle dance backwards and forwards in time for the music.
I found that incredible because it was up so high, nobody else could touch it.
The investigators were truly intrigued by the strange movements of the ordinary objects in the sealed-off room. But in near total darkness, the real evidence remained inconclusive. The observers could hear unexplained sounds and make out movements in the dark. They even felt water spraying around them, but couldn't make out the cause of any of the strange events.
Bells were ringing. There were things happening from the moment you sat down. There was something going on all the time.
So what could have been causing these strange occurrences? The investigators had rigged up a special camera to try and capture any unexplainable activity on film.
I think one of the most important, if not the most important, bit of evidence for a paranormal phenomenon was the production of films from one of these fairly cheap instant cameras. This is actually the camera that was used, and the film was loaded new, the camera was new. The lens of the camera was sealed by my colleagues, and we heard the characteristic sound of this being pulled out. I don't want to do it now because this is actually still has in it the cassette that I originally put in. And we know that there was no question of substitution because fortunately these films have on them numbers, each one, and so we pulled out a sample film as a control in order to check that the subsequent film that we found, produced by some form of magic, had the sequel number to it, so that there could be no substitution possible.
To the amazement of the investigating team, the camera revealed a series of strange images that Montague Keen is still trying to explain to this day.
The main question was whether conceivably someone could have got access to the camera in the dark through the netting, and after pulling it out, scribbled and scratched around on the top of the film before the gel had done its work. You have about 35 seconds to do this, and produced some sort of image. And fortunately, we have one piece of evidence which I think shows conclusively that the picture must have been produced inside the camera.
In one of the photographs, the chemical gel that is released onto the film inside the camera appears to cover part of the unexplained image. Montague Keen claims that this is proof that the image must have been created inside the sealed camera itself.
Bearing in mind that this was A, in the dark, and B, in any case, the camera had the lens totally sealed, and we checked to make sure that no one could have interfered with the seal. But even if they had done, they would have required quite elaborate light and equipment to be able to produce this sort of picture.
The strange events reached an unsettling climax during the third and final experiment. Now in total darkness, the witnesses claimed to have clearly heard and even felt the presence of birds and other wild animals inside the sealed room. Some of the observers even felt the presence of a large snake.
I am terrified of snakes. And even though my logical mind was telling me there wasn't a snake there, I could sense it. And you heard it slithering right up and going up on his lap, and he stroked it. I was so frightened. And I felt ridiculous because I was frightened. And lots of wonderful things happened.
And the most spectacular one was when an owl came in and got caught in the netting. And the noise of the netting you don't actually hear owls screaming, but you hear a very characteristic sound.
There were lots of birds flying around the room, but the one that got trapped, I don't know whether you've ever heard a bird who is trapped. It is really very traumatic to hear it. And you feel so bad because you're sitting there and you're not helping it. And we all sat there totally helpless, and yet every one of us were distressed because you felt so helpless. It was struggling, it was caught up in the net, and we couldn't do anything.
By the end of the 3 experiments, a long series of mysterious events had been witnessed by the participants. Montague Keen was now faced with the difficult task of explaining exactly what had caused the strange phenomena.
I don't think we could have absolutely ruled out an elaborate hoax without introducing something like infrared cameras. I think we felt that we had virtually ruled it out by looking at a combination of all of the things that would have had to have been hoaxed. But what made it, I think, impossible was the fact that one of the pictures produced on the second sitting was inherently paranormal, unless someone had managed to get hold of the camera, take it out of the room, remove the cover, have plenty of light, take very careful, precise photographs, put it all back again and bring it back. I mean, this was a scenario which was just simply not feasible. So I think if you take that into account, and then you ask yourself, well, if that is genuine, would all the other things be fraudulent? Would they have gone to the trouble of faking lesser things because they've already got something which is quite clearly paranormal? The answer is that no, and no one in their senses would wish to do that.